to once again be able to introduce Mr. Philip Kotler, who will give us a short talk and then open the floor for questions and answers. Mr. Kotler hardly needs any introduction, but it is worth mentioning the highlights as he is indeed a remarkable person. He is a marketing author, consultant, and a professor emeritus of the S.C. Johnson & Son Distinguished Professor of International Marketing at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwest University. In addition to his long service at Kellogg School of Management, Mr. Kotler has received 22 honorary degrees from around the world. He is known for popularizing the definition of marketing mix. He's the author of over 80 books, including Marketing Management, first published in 1967, which is now in its 16th edition and still going strong. In addition, he's published more than 150 articles in leading journals, including the Harvard Business Review and the Journal of Marketing, who have awarded him the coveted Alpha Kappa Psi Award 3 times for the best annual published article. Mr. Kotler, sir, it's wonderful to have you back with us, and it's always a delight to hear you share and expound your wisdom and great experience with us all. And I know I speak for all the students in saying we look forward to your session this afternoon, evening, or morning. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Michael. I'm looking forward to my own session because I learn by how I talk and how I retrieve information, my vast experience in marketing. So remember that the framework we're using is that this is all about helping our audience do a better job of marketing. And I usually start with some new idea or aspect of marketing. For about 10 to 20 minutes, maybe at the most, I will talk about that question and area. And then I want as many questions to come to me. I will answer all of them to the best extent possible. Now, setting the framework for my discussion on this program, I made a point last time that every company needs to have 2 rooms. The room number 1 is the one of their performance in their operations. Presumably, you're in a company and you make a certain set of products and services, and that's the room you're running all the time. And you're running the room for the purpose of sales and profits. And you hope that you don't have to add any new products or services. You simply will go on forever making money with what you're now selling. Well, that would be naive, wouldn't it? Why? Because some of your customers will end up finding better solutions or cheaper solutions from competitors, and they drop out of your customer group. Or new improvements in the product that you sell and come about, but you haven't made those improvements, and then you're bypassed by those companies that made the improvements. So for many reasons, your business as it is now constituted may have 5 years of life left in it. So what do? Well, you also operate a second room, and the second room is where you're creating your future businesses. In other words, if you don't have a second room, you're going to die within 3 to 5 years because you're going to lose customers sooner or later in a hyper-competitive society that we are in. So in that second room, you must get some creative ideas for adding a new product possibly, or a new service, or making some other changes. So we're talking about that stage where you're recognizing the need for some new idea that is worthwhile to at least research. And one of the best models for this problem is called the classic stage gate model. And it consists of 8 stages. I assume your company gets busy from time to time in collecting ideas. Let me give you one example. Starbucks always wants your ideas on how they can sell their coffee even better than they are selling it today. In fact, they even pay for new ideas on how to improve Starbucks. Why shouldn't your company be on the search? Now, let's say you ran a restaurant. Have you ever asked any customers what they thought about the product that they just bought from you and ate at your restaurant? Did you look at the plate and see if the plate was empty, or is it still full with half of what they ordered uneaten? In other words, every company needs to spot, must have a creative mindset where they're spotting some ideas. Now, that's called idea generation. Now, please throw away most of the ideas, not any of the good ones, of course. That's called screening. Without too much effort, you can sense certain ideas are not for you. They popped into your mind, but your firm is not the kind that can handle that kind of idea. Now you're left with, hopefully, at least one idea that looked interesting for your business. And you got to move it from being an idea to being a concept. In other words, you have to develop the idea further and frame it and test it. Now, once you, what's involved in that is pretty extensive. You want to certainly reach a point where you're running a focus group with a select set of 5 or so potential customers, and they talk about the idea, and you're really asking them, what do you think of it? If it were available to you, and I'm giving you a picture of the idea and how it works, and would you buy it if the price was $100? Why or why not? So you're testing the concept that you're developing with a focus group, but it's not enough. You're going to probably want to go to some actual setting where ideas are bought, maybe the local store, and maybe the store manager. And if it's a product, you're really asking the store manager, is it exciting enough to him or her to give you some shelf space if it were available tomorrow? And if he says, no, I would never give space that I have for that kind of idea. You know, that's the whole process of concept development and testing. If you get a lot of positive affirmations on this idea, and make an estimate that, boy, this idea should lead to sales of X over a certain time period Y, you have enough data to show your board, maybe. Maybe it's going to need board approval.
Okay.
You always differ between short-run strategy and long-run strategy.
Just a technical glitch there. I hope Mr. Kotler will be back with us shortly. Oh, Mr. Kotler
Yes, Michael, what happened?
I'm reassured, so we'll now go back to him. Good.
Oh, good. Yes, but by all means, tell me if we're losing a connection, but apparently we are back.
We're back. All is good.
So I want to just repeat that there are stages. My whole point was your company is going to fail if it doesn't come up with some new things within the next few years. And to do that, it's called being in an innovative company, having at least a second room where you're working on some innovation. And to repeat, there will be a lot of ideas you hope that will come your way from your employees and other parties. You're going to screen the ideas by throwing away most of the bad ones. You're going to find one good one, hopefully, and that one you're going to develop carefully so that even a consumer can feel that he or she understands exactly what you're selling and the price you're selling it at and where it will be purchased and so on. Now, you will develop your marketing strategy, which means you're going to buy some advertising probably. You're going to get your sales force trained in this new product, and so on. And so you develop your strategy, and now you're at a point where you've imagined how you're going to price the product and how much you're going to sell. So you're going to do a business analysis, which is to show the company's board or managers who you report to what the likely sales and profits will be for the next few years. And if you get a green light on that, you're going to actually turn some of your factory over into making that new physical product, if it's a physical product, or if it's a service product, setting up the development where that service would be available at certain places that are clear to the market. And then you're now at a stage where you better do a real test. By this stage, you really have product. You have been able to find at least one store that will give you shelf space. And then you're going to run your ads in that local community, and you'll get information very quickly about whether anyone has heard about this new product and whether any of it moves off the shelf. And if nothing moves off the shelf or not much moves off the shelf, you better drop that whole idea or try another store and see if it works better in another kind of store. Now, the whole point is, once you get some confident results, you're ready to commercialize. And those are the stages. Robert Gordon, and he's Robert Cooper. He's a great friend of mine in Canada, and he is the leading user of the stage gate model. He helps many large and medium-sized companies use this process. And his book was the 2033 book. That's the latest edition. Okay, let's move on. Okay, I'm going to go to the next stage, next one. I think it's here. I just have a few slides. Okay. I have developed my own model for marketing a new product, which I call the A to F model. It's no different than the other one, but it puts it in a different framework. And I'm saying that if you're going to be a firm that will occasionally start up a new business, you need 6 skills. You need the skills of being an activator. Now, an activator is someone who, you have enough people in your company who come up with new ideas. They initiate new ideas. Secondly, you're going to need some people who have browser skills. Now, you know what a browser is? A browser is someone who has been told about this new idea you discovered, and he or she will research whether it's already in existence, and where is it produced by now. And they will gather a lot of information that might either tell you this is an idea that's already owned by other people, so drop it, or it's an idea that you should know certain things about where it is found in other forms. So you need a browser mentality, not the same person. Usually the person who's good at browsing is got more of a librarian mentality. You know, like a librarian can look up a lot about any new idea. You need a third group, one or more people who are creators. They're the ones who will actually refine the concept and test it carefully. And let's say you test it carefully, then you need another skill set from someone else who are developers. They actually make the product in a factory. They get it ready. Now you need another group of executors. Just think of the sales force. The product is ready. Now you want a sales force to knock on doors and get it placed in channels of distribution. And finally, you want to always get enough financing from your finance department, because when you're a startup, you're not making money, you're borrowing money. Hopefully you have found excited sponsors who will finance all of this work that you've been doing. So my model has it's called the ABCDEF firm that has these 6 skill sets. Now let's move on. Wow, watch out for that table. So what is that all about? Well, we're not going to read it. You notice under activators, there's a lot of conditions and aspects of being an activator. Under browsers, there's a lot of skill sets. But let's take the third one, the C, the creative. Creative says that there's some people around who know certain testing techniques called synectics, or they can do brainwashing. They can use lateral marketing. They can do attribute listing. That's a beautiful list of technical methods of testing new ideas. Now, the developers have their list, their executors, and the financiers. We can make those available to you, but let me move on. This is the same chart, and it's an actual circled example of a new product that was made. In other words, under activators, I circled what actually happened to this successful product at the beginning, before it even existed. And I circled what happened in the browsing stage, in the creative stage, in the development stage, in the execution stage, and so on. In other words, I have a history of one of our successful products, and it would also be a history of an unsuccessful product where we might realize we didn't do enough browsing or we didn't do enough development. Okay, so when you're starting up a new product, you got to ask a set of questions, and they're all very reasonable. What is the product's reason for being? Does anyone need it? Is it better or cheaper than something else? At what level of excellence must the main benefit be delivered? Can you get away with sort of a rough version of it for testing, and if you get good results, then you refine it later on? At what level of excellence are you going to deliver the product? What features will be present in the product? What design constraints are you going to expect to meet from engineering and manufacturing who say they can't get it ready on time or something like that? In what critical comparison points must the product excel over the competition? If there is competition, what have be your main points of differentiation? Because you need what we call a value presentation, a value proposition. You're saying to the market, buy our product because it delivers some value or a mix of values better than any competitor. So there's other questions, and I won't read them to you, but you should have a good list of questions and confidence in the answers you gave. Now, all of this is about what is marketing's role during the startup. We know that the innovation's role is to be people who have all those skill sets I just mentioned from A to F. Well, in the past, sadly, many companies develop new products without asking marketing people to participate in any way. In other words, their idea was they're smart enough to make a beautiful new product, and they have a good marketing team that they will tell about the product and explain it to the marketing team after it's ready and all set. Wow, that's terrible. Why? Because the marketing team may have different ideas on how such a new product should be priced based on their experience. The marketing people may know of certain features that really work in the market for this new product idea. So my point is very straightforward. Marketing must be involved at the very beginning of a startup, must participate in the startup and its development. And I make a special point about that because I want to say that the difference between an innovator and a marketer are as following. An innovator sees the possible. A marketer sees the valuable. I remember working with the Philips company, which is a highly innovative company, which has had a number of failures, product failures. Why? Because they left everything to the innovators who are masters of the possible, but those people don't know if it's going to sell really. They don't know how new products are actually bought by a company or an individual decision maker. So putting together what we call development and marketing, you get both masters of the possible and masters of the valuable. And I'll give you one case in my experience, and that's Fujifilm. Kodak and Fuji were the two leading firms making film, if you remember what film is, in the yellow boxes of Kodak or the greener boxes of Fuji. But in any case, you know that the new camera, the new smartphone, does all the photography that you need without buying any film. So what happened? Kodak died. Yes. And what about Fuji? Fuji is alive today and even stronger because they were able to develop other treasured products from their own experience as Fuji. Let me tell you it this way. If you wanted to buy a share of stock in Fuji Film today, it would be $60 a share. It was as low as $20 a share when they lost their film market. People weren't confident enough. And then it went as high as 90 later on. This was after it lost the film business. Now it's settled at sort of $60, and it's run by the gentleman whose picture you see next to me is that great leader they had who imagined new products that they could make with the skill set they developed in making film. So they're very big now in the healthcare market with several products. They're even big in the skincare product. And even if they don't make the separate brand for a facial company making things for women to improve their looks and so on, they are the supplier of a lot of the ingredients that go into making that brand. And the president adopted the following idea. We are a never stop firm. We never stop. We're always innovating. So a few more things, and now I'm going to get to and then I'll get to your questions. Once you have a new product, you have to be able to create buzz. People have to start talking about it. There are three groups that will help you diffuse information about the new product. Watch for one group called mavens. Mavens are people who are expert on the topic. Let's say if you introduce a new wine, who are the people who everyone respects their taste in wine? And could you get that maven to say, hey, there's a new wine, I'm blown off by that one because it's priced right and it's so tasty. So find mavens to diffuse information about your new product. Second, try to find people who are high connectors. They know a lot of people. They have a lot of visibility. In other words, if they get excited about your new wine, they're going to tell lots and lots of their friends about it. And you can urge them and help them do that. And then the third group that's going to help diffuse the information about your product are the salespeople. And those came from, by the way, the researcher Malcolm Gladwell in his book, Tipping Point. And now I would also add, of course, all your advertising as another major method of getting information out about your new product. So to be a winner at innovation, build a strong working relationship between not just innovators and marketers and financiers. They have to be the team. 2, appoint persons to perform the roles. Make sure you have in your company one or more activators, one or more browsers, one or more creators, developers, executors, and financiers. Invite customers and other stakeholders to co-create your future. Get other people outside of your firm involved in your success and talking about this new product. And then do a launch plan for buzz marketing. So within 5 years, I know you should not be in the same business you're in today, because if you're only in the same business that you're in today, you will be out of business. Change is too rapid. All right, that's my sharing with you innovation and creativity, and I won't get back to that subject in further talks unless your questions raise questions about anything I've just said. But I've got a lot of other things to share with you, but I want this to be the time we get questions from you, and I welcome them so I can learn from you as well. So, Michael, do we have any questions that you want to start with?
Indeed, we do. Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Kotler. Yes, we do have questions. They're coming in the chat, which is great. So I think a good question to start with is, you talked about the classic stage gate model. Andreas asks, talking about this classic stage gate model, how would you test your idea if it was a B2B, business to business service?
Oh, very good question, because it's easier in talking to audiences to mention common products we buy from a store. But B2B is the bigger part of the world, by the way. There's no question that businesses, just making a pair of shoes, so many business connections have to be made to buy leather, to buy rubber, to buy laces, and so on and so forth. Now, here's the thing. A good example would be a company that now makes a new air conditioner or a new vacuum cleaner. No, let me take this one. Let's say you're going to recognize that offices need a cleaning machine that is operated in the evening because everyone's left the office, and now there's a lot of paper around, and the floor has to be cleaned and so on. And you're a B2B marketer of such machines. By the way, the example is probably an insidious one because of the whole thing of empty offices now. And the whole fact is that many companies are producing products without the offices. But let's imagine that's the machine. Now, you've got to ask which companies have a lot of office space and do a lot of office cleaning at night. And you love your new machine and believe it can be sold on the fact that it works faster and it's cheaper, and it cleans to the same standards as any other machine. let's say you've identified one such company, and it's actually a big which Amazon. Amazon is a very busy company now, and they have a lot of offices and factories and so on to be cleaned by the machine. Now, this means you need a contact to get even into the purchasing department of that company, because they have a routine for buying expensive new equipment. And even if you got the name of the person to call on, you'll know probably whether it really is going to be a call that will make some sense. So you're going to have to study the buyer. In B2B, you may find out that any big purchase, let's say your machine is about a $10,000 cleaner. I mean, you're pushing a big machine through offices. And you have to know that basically anything for that price isn't made by one person in that company. That person has a set of experts, and before anything is bought, needs a lot of time from your salespeople. And it's not that you just sent a sales person. You're going to send a sales team that includes the person who developed the new cleaning machine, so that basically he or she could answer any question about the technical side of the machine, because salespeople have a brief view of how the machine works, but this could be a purchasing agent who wants depth before he goes on with you. Okay, now you can see that from the very beginning, you had the idea of making a machine B2B. And did you have to do those 8 stages? Yes. Why not? All of those stages had to be not only financed, but you had to come out with the perfect machine for that business of cleaning offices. And then I would say that it's more difficult. The only difference between B2B and B2C is in B2C, it's getting one consumer interested and seeing something on the shelf. In B2B, it's getting a committee managed by a buyer who has buying expertise, and where you have to do a lot of research for each separate company that you believe would benefit from this machine. In other words, that's why you price it at $10,000, because it has to cover the cost of all the research you have to do in B2B, which you don't have to do in B2C. Because each big company has its own buyer and committee. Okay. So, Michael, that's my long-winded answer to your question.
That was great. I have a question actually coming in from one of our other chats. We have a Spanish and a Portuguese simultaneous translation occurring, and some questions have come in from there. You talked about the 2 rooms. It was very interesting and one of the rooms is about having this space for innovation and creating the solutions of the future to make sure a company remains relevant. So how can you help to have keep this innovative mindset alive when the people who are actually making the decisions, often in the companies and indeed in governments driving government policy, are led by people who are of an older mindset and therefore perhaps more stuck in their ways or have legacy or are not perhaps so hungry for change?
A good question. That's why if you put both processes of what I call performance marketing, where you're selling whatever you now make, and innovative marketing as a process, if you put both of them in one room, guess what? We would not get any successful innovation. because the company, 80% of the company's involved in getting sales and profits. So you need a separate room. Now, is that practical? Yes. Let me give you an example. One of my favorite companies is Samsung in South Korea. Samsung makes three big product classes: television sets, smart phones, and thirdly, appliances, kitchen appliances and cleaning appliances. Now, do you think that they believe that their appliances that they make now will last forever and not be improved by some other competitor, or that the TV set is the best possible and it will never be improved by any new technology? No. So you need to have that next room. So what happens in Samsung is, just after even making the latest TV sets with the best methodology that Samsung can command, they've already got another room where people are trying to figure out something better in television than is being offered. It's like a competition internally. In other words, can that next room even improve on our now most recently improved television set? And the answer is yes. Samsung has been always a leader. Remember, it was Sony that we always wanted to buy. The next set had to be a Sony. By the way, I'm not ruling them out. Sony does the same thing. Sony has a existing room for performance and another room to make the set better than the next time. So my answer is that you need two rooms, and we know of a lot of companies that are operating a second room, safe from you said that the boss is still old guard. Yes, that's true. But we're talking about companies that are smart enough and run by bosses who are smart enough to know they need development work to go continuously on to improve what they're going to be offering in the future. And they sanction that other room and are patient with it and financing it patiently.
So, I mean, but when it comes to, for example, an example like Kodak, who obviously got it very wrong, what can be done about a situation like that, where obviously the senior management didn't sanction any sort of innovation, but were resting on their laurels?
Well, they did have innovation coming out of they had a wonderful set of chemists and electronic people and so on. They had created the first smartphone. They didn't market it. They didn't announce it. They knew it would hurt them, but better to grab all that you can that's still left in the film business before you try to undo the film business yourself.
All right.
So Kodak was smart enough to know that films will die, and smart enough not to introduce something that would kill it faster. But in doing that, they lost out. And Fuji was working on its next room better than Kodak. Kodak had a next room, and it had some good products in it, but Fuji did a next room better. So now there's a competition of quality in next rooms, and I can imagine an expert in innovation being asked, "Oh, come to my company. We'll pay you for a few days that you spend with us. We want you to look at our next room and see if we're doing the right thing." Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Next rooms exist, and there are probably experts who can tell you, "Oh my God, that next room is not organized very well for helping you out. But here's what you might really do with the next room."
And I guess the challenge is knowing what things in the next room are worth taking to market. I mean, that's the real challenge, isn't it? What is going to be a success?
Well, what we have to avoid, Michael, is the company and the set of employees who are so excited about what they created that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world, that they don't do the testing. They think, gee, others are working on similar ideas. We better get in there first and own the market. Now, you and I know how many companies that were first in the market didn't remain first in the market. That this second firm that didn't have it sees it going on and thinks it's going to work, and they can come with more resources and they can improve what they saw. So many examples of not winning by being first. So why the rush? You said your next room has gotten something good and it's ready to be tested, and do it carefully. Don't make assumptions that everyone's got to love the product because you love it.
Great. I have a question from Janik, who starts by saying, sir, you have a PhD in economics. Can you give 3 top tips to an aspiring student who is about to set off on a PhD in brand experience? So this is now kind of based more at education.
Well, good luck. I can give some ideas. If you're going to go for a PhD in marketing, you should probably, if you have the skill set, to go into the areas where there's shortages in marketing or future shortages. For example, every company now wants someone who is good at Chat GPT, the new AI. They're desperately, companies are desperate to find someone who's on top of how artificial intelligence will change the whole nature of their company. It will make some jobs superfluous that can be dropped. So I might say, if you have a skill set, which is more or less mathematical, you're not afraid of math and so on, you should major in quantitative marketing. Now, there's a number of people who love marketing, but they love it from the qualitative point of view. They are dreamers. They can imagine new products. They let someone else test the products, but therefore they're very interested in how the customer really buys. They want to be they wanted to be psychologists. As a matter of fact, guess who's been added to marketing departments historically? Normally it was people who knew a lot about distribution, channels of distribution, how retailers work and how wholesalers work. That was the norm. But then we began to say, no, it's the customer that Peter Drucker said is the aim of the firm, to create customers. The business of a firm is to create and keep and grow customers. Okay, so they said, therefore, how does a customer think? Well, we don't know from the channels of distribution area. That's psychology and sociology. All of a sudden, marketing had to be not straight economics. Remember why? Economics used a very simple theory, the rational consumer, that everyone has a good mind and they therefore can look at a product and its price and know whether it's worthwhile. Or they can go on they can go on their computer and get other opinions from people. The rational mind, yes, I would say about 10 to 20% of our mind is rational, but 80% is emotional. And that's true of B2B too. I can give you at another occasion examples of B2B, which is highly emotional thinking. So the point is, all of a sudden, the economic man the rational man model is too simplistic. It has to be replaced by the holistic view of the social and psychological man and woman, of course. And so this PhD student who has to decide what he's good at, what he cares, what turns him or her on, and that's important. But also the basic point I made is realize that marketing departments may be overfull of advertising specialists and underfull of artificial intelligence specialists. And if you can get some reading on that and your skill set falls where companies are looking for that 2 years from now, remember your PhD is 2 to 5 years away. You've got to ask, where will marketing be at that point? And by the way, there's a friend of mine who put out a book called The Future of Marketing Future, I believe. And I'm trying to remember his name, but he's revising it now. In a sense, you want to look at something like that. What are going to be the main jobs needed by marketers in the 2025, 2027? Okay.
Great. Thank you for that. We have a question from Olivia, who asks, in this increasingly data-driven world that we live in, with a lot of tech, how do you perceive the role of good old-fashioned empathy and emotional connections in building enduring and successful brands?
Yes. Well, first of all, let me take first data as a problem and then empathy as a problem. Most companies now that are successful in marketing are data-driven companies. They don't want to make decisions based on instinct and hunch. They want it to be backed by data. Now, the data is to come to a very good understanding, at least of the segment's behavior. If you are, most companies are not dealing with a whole market. They have chosen a segment or a niche, and they are specialized. And
Yep.
they normally buy things. Do they buy this product? What do they read? What movies do they watch? And so on. And that makes you a data-driven company. And then you can know whether it pays for your message to go to person X or Y or Z. That's the whole point.
Every time we lose Mr. Kotler, we come back to me just so I can announce that hopefully he's going to return. It's one of those days where we seem to have a bunch of challenges happening. And he is back.
Can you hear me now? And should I repeat what I just said very briefly?
Yes, please.
The question that came was, what is the role of data in marketing and the role of empathy in marketing? My main point is you won't be a marketer unless you're data-driven, because that's where the results are really going to come from. People skilled in taking data, putting the data into a machine, and doing what is called machine learning. And the machine, it has a set of equations that have been built up over time by your business experience, and it will generate estimates of sales and profits for your moves, your planned marketing moves. All right. Now, hopefully that works too. But there's some people in the company always who are better at hunches and at empathy that is beyond description, where the data doesn't exist, but it's real. The data could exist, but doesn't exist. and people have a feeling about something. And I would say that I would trust someone who says, I know a lot of our individual customers, and I'm a salesman, and I know how they think. I'm going to trust that to a large extent, that they do really have a feeling for the customer, and they want the marketing plan to embed that understanding. Remember, marketing started to serve the salespeople who had the contact with the customers. We were the people who did the marketing research, so the salespeople didn't have the time to do the research. We were the ones who prepared the brochures and the ads. So we want to have people who are living with the customers, and we want to respect them. And it's a system not only of us supplying them, but them supplying us. Now, sometimes this is the problem. You say to salespeople, oh, you've learned so much about selling. Tell us what you learned. Take your time away from selling it may only be a day of your time. You could have made some money, of course, using your time, not talking to me, the marketer, but I understand. But can you tell me more? Well, that's a classic problem. The salespeople are too busy to help the marketing people fully understand empathically the customer.
Right. Very interesting. We have many more questions coming in. And I particularly like this question. It's quite unusual. And it's from Gerardo, who I believe must be in one of the Latin American parts of the world. And Gerardo asks, do you have any ideas about making buzz for a business in an environment where there is a very high crime rate? Because when you create the buzz, then obviously criminals become attracted, and that criminals come along and take an interest in the business once it becomes well known as a result of creating the buzz around the business. Is there any ideas of how one can operate in that sort of rather troubling and testing environment? I think we've just lost Mr. Kotler again, but I hope very much he will.
Oh,
and he's back.
I can answer once you tell me you can hear me.
Yes,
can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes, we've got you back. We're sort of on and off.
Okay. Yes. The question has to do with how do you handle a mob or crooks who want to cash in on your business in a neighborhood or city where there is a lot of crime. In fact, one of the reasons there are protection people is they say, it is true, there's a lot of crime. You need to buy protection. The joke is they're the ones who create the crime. You're paying off people not to make your store a victim of their plot. So what do you say to them? That you will not pay and then have your place burned down? We had so much of that in a city like Chicago, during the 30s, when there was Great Depression and people were looking for any way to make money, they would take advantage of the businesses that were started by trying to sell them protection money. You can do it, but if not, when you elect the next people who make promises about eliminating crime.
He's back. Great. Sorry, we're back. We lost you for a second. We've lost you again. This is a roller coaster ride today, with all sorts of connection challenges. But hopefully, we're still waiting. Hopefully, he'll be back shortly. An interesting answer.
Yeah, I'm back. When you say I'm back.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes, we were in Chicago. It was very interesting when you were talking about.
Okay, let me just say.
Okay, we're waiting. Mr. Kotler is, I think, hopefully on his way back. There's an interesting question from Gerardo. Thank you very much, Gerardo Velasquez, who I assume must work in an interesting part of the world, perhaps in Latin America, and Mr. Kotler is giving us an answer based on experience in Chicago, and we're hopefully going to get him back shortly. So. In fact, we've lost Mr. Kotler. Actually, now basically at the end of the session, we lost him basically 3 minutes before we were supposed to conclude, and we haven't been able to get him back online. It's been one of those days. Sometimes it happens when all the IT and the technology works beautifully, and other days when it just seems not to want to do that. To once again be able to introduce Mr. Philip Kotler,